Alrighty, everybody, welcome back. This is Tavis, Killian, and Anthony McDaniels with another episode of the Wacky World of Energy. I know, different recording location, but don't worry, same old show that you're starting to know and love. We've got plenty of great stories to get into today, and could get a little bit heated, but then again, that's what makes this segment a little bit more fun. Anthony, what do you want to start with?
Oh man, just another wacky world. This
Every
stuff
week.
is absolutely. Oh my god, it's like you could start out with a comedy skit about any of this stuff every week. I swear.
That's a good content idea. I think the people would
Right.
like it.
Yeah, I know. Well, let's start off with an article from June 17th, 2022. Oil price titled "Russia's gas deliveries to Europe plunge further." Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so a couple bullets here for everybody. Buyers in Austria, Germany, Italy, and Slovakia are receiving much lower volumes than usual. Gas flows to France from Germany have ceased completely. Draghi from Italy. Russia's quote-unquote technical reasons for lower gas delivery are lies. What Draghi is referring to there is Russia is stating that they had to go down for maintenance work. It's a semi-seasonal type of thing. It's not that uncommon, but it's not getting done, the maintenance work, because apparently the stuff that needed to be worked on had to be shipped over to Canada for some refurbishment from Siemens, I believe, and it's being held up because of quote-unquote sanctions. Yeah, Russia could easily be using that as kind of a, oh, sorry guys, like we're waiting to get everything fixed, but we just can't do it. So I'll get into the article a little bit here. Natural gas flows from Russia to Europe continued to dive on Friday. So this would have been Friday the 17th of June 2022, with buyers in Italy, Germany, Austria, and Slovakia receiving much lower volumes than usual. Flows to France have completely ceased. The cut in Russian gas deliveries to European customers, which have agreed to the ruble to gas scheme Putin has demanded, is explained by Moscow, with Siemens Energy delaying the return of repaired gas turbine from Canada because of the sanctions on Russia. European leaders, however, say that Russia's official explanation is a lie and that lower deliveries were a political move from the Kremlin. This week, Russia reduced supply to its biggest customers in Europe, Germany and Italy, each of which were sourcing around 40% of their gas from Russia before the invasion of Ukraine. Also this week, the leaders of Germany, Italy, and France visited Kyiv and met with President Zelensky in a show of support of the EU to the Ukraine. On Tuesday, Russia's Gazprom said it would limit the gas supply via the Nord Stream pipeline to Germany by 40%.
That's a big pipeline.
That's a big old chunk right there, compared to planned flows because of a delay in equipment repairs. On Wednesday, Gazprom said the cuts would deepen to 60% of daily throughput. On Friday, Italy flagged additional cuts to deliveries, with Eni saying that it would receive just half of the volume requested for the day. Earlier this week, Russian supply to Italy was cut by 15%. Germany, we and others believe that these explanations are lies and that the gas is being used as a political tool, just like grain.
Yeah, and like you said, there's, sure, supply chain issues, yes, those still exist. Sanctions to work through, I'm sure that doesn't speed this process up. But from everything we've talked about so far, I'm going to have to side with Germany and say, yeah, this is geopolitical leverage being used at the fullest.
It's obviously geopolitical leverage. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you guys came out a couple of weeks ago, you guys being the European Union, and said, we're going to cut off all Russia. We're going to cut off the gas within the next couple of years. We're going to cut oil by 90% by the end of this year. And what did we say? Was this a big surprise, the possibility of this for Putin or Russia?
No, not at all.
Was it unbudgeted for? No. And what were they going to do when they announced their plans to taper off in a measured fashion? They were going to beat them to the punch.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for.
Hello.
They got it.
Hello. Hello, is anybody there? Hello, brain. Is there a brain in the room?
Yeah, this is not rocket surgery at all. And like you said, Russia didn't just start this invasion because, well, they wanted to pick a fight with a little guy. This was premeditated for many reasons. They want to get to warm ports, probably. They want the ruble to be strengthened, and they want people to consume their energy resources. They're getting everything. They're getting all of that. From their perspective, I bet they're very happy with how things are progressing. And then still we have people in fantasy land in Europe going, oh, well, I can't believe they would cut this off to us. That's not right. Of course it's not right, but this didn't fall out of the sky. We've been talking about this for weeks, months at this point.
I know. It's just... Well, Tavis, I'm going to let you kick off the next headline here. I'll let you dive into that article, another oil price article. So what's the response from Germany that we see amid these cuts to gas?
Well, let me tell you, Germany's very quick with the solutions. Like you said, oil price article published on the 20th today, titled Germany Turns to Coal Power Amid the Natural Gas Crisis. Bullets at the top. As Europe continues to struggle to wean itself off Russian oil and gas, coal's going to play an increasingly important role in electricity production. I'm sorry to laugh, as I read this, I still can't get past it. German economy minister has admitted that the country will have to use more coal-fired power generation for a, what he calls, transition period. Top priority with
Everything's spent the last 20 years in a transition period?
Well, this is the transition through the transition. It's a sub-transition, if you will.
What a freaking joke.
Germany's,
oh my God. They shut down their coal-fired generation capacity. They shut down new mines. And, Tavis, you should elaborate for all of our listeners that not only does Germany use coal, but they use like the worst and dirtiest kind.
Yeah, it's one of the least mature forms of coal. They have plenty of what's called lignite. And when you look at it, it's not dark and black like the coal you probably got from Santa. Well, maybe that was just me. It's much lighter, a lot more brown, and has a lot of more organic material that it's more akin to burning biomass than it is refined hydrocarbons. So, of course, Germany's going to pitch this decision. They've got plenty of the stuff, but it's dirty. This is worse than burning natural gas. I'd argue it's probably worse than using oil to fire power plants, but I don't really know what they're kitted out for over there. Germany, yeah, they got a lot of capacity with coal-fired stuff, but let me dig into what their, economy minister has to say. This is unfortunate, but it is necessary in order to reduce gas consumption. We must and we will do all that it takes in order to direct as much gas in storage as possible during the summer and the autumn. So already, it seems like their strategy is not finding new resources, rather, well, what can we conserve right now? What can we ration? What can we really do to make this gas we know we have stretch out? Because, I don't know, they're still in denial, saying maybe Russia will give us energy materials. It's incredibly confusing at this point.
Well, you know, we haven't really covered the article on this, but for those who want to look it up, they can. There was a pretty major LNG export facility out of Freeport, Texas, that caught on fire, pretty much totally disabled a large portion, or I think all of it. A week or two ago, was it now?
I think it was last week, and it was all of it. And this facility is the 7th largest in the United States. That's 20% of our export capacity just gone.
Yeah, I'm. You know, let's go out on a limb here. Okay?
I'm listening.
When that happened, a massive amount of export capability went offline to send LNG from the Gulf of Mexico terminals to Europe, right? Mm-hmm. And what did we see after that with natural gas prices in US dollars? They plummeted, right? Because there's less natural gas. In the United States, if we were just using our gas, we don't need it to be $8, $9, $10 an in. But if we have to go and ship a good chunk of it over the Atlantic to help Russia fill their gas, the gap that they have in their gas supplies, then that's going to improve the price in US dollars, because a good chunk of that now going not for our use, but over to Europe, okay? There's been a lot of chime in about, in recent years, cyber warfare and how, you know, unfriendly nations would try to hack certain things. Some things have happened over the past couple of years with certain utility grids that have been hacked from places like Russia. Yeah. It is not out of the realm of possibility that the explosion in the LNG facility was directly or indirectly a result of some sort of cyber warfare. We have to acknowledge the possibility of things like that. It's a really unfortunate timing for a bunch of LNG export capacity to go offline. Mm-hmm. Now, this is totally, I haven't read anything. This is I wouldn't even call it an opinion, but it's something you should think about. The point I make is this: whether or not that's something like what has happened to bring off that capacity, at least temporarily, the reality remains that supplying Europe with a good chunk of our gas from the United States is a much longer supply chain. There's a lot more moving pieces in it. You've got facilities that you need to have a bunch of tankers, and it's an orchestrated thing. You have to be constantly orchestrating this thing. Any parts of that whole thing go down, you can't just reroute to another line. You just lose capacity, and that's it, right? So the point is that us being able to satisfy Europe in an uninterrupted manner consistently throughout the rest of this year and who knows how much further is probably somewhat a pipe dream as well, because there's just too many moving pieces, and that further stokes the issues. And it's when our capacities to export were hampered because of that explosion. You start to see a lot of these articles about Russia. All of a sudden, we have maintenance delays, and they're cutting gas even more. And then now Germany's like, oh my God, we have to go out. We got to use coal. We got to use coal. It's a transition period. I would like to know the definition of a transition period, because once you've been doing something for a while, I don't call it a transition anymore. Or at least, if you've been transitioning to renewables for 20 years and off of fossil fuels. Yep. And now you're like, oh my God, we got to turn our coal back on.
The coal transition. The great coal transition of 2022. Where were you?
Yeah, I mean, oh God. Gazprom CEO Alexei Miller said last week about gas supply to Europe. Quote, "Our product, our rules. We don't play by rules we didn't create."
That's brilliant. That I don't know who wrote that, but whoever's telling him what to say,
that's the Gazprom
beautiful.
CEO Alexei Miller.
Beautiful.
That's Russia's side. Mm-hmm. That's as simple as it. That's as simple as it is for them.
Yep.
Again, we'll read that quote again. Our product, our rules. We don't play by rules we didn't create.
Mm-hmm. That's almost some supervillain type of stuff. There's undertones to that statement that scare me. And also, I might add, if you thought, Anthony, when he was talking about, hacking infrastructure, that sounds crazy, that sounds ridiculous, please look into the Colonial Pipeline. I believe that was around June, July of last year. There was a group that was believed to be from Eastern Europe who hacked this pipeline, held it for ransom, and really slowed a lot of the fuel delivery infrastructure and really jacked up some prices in spot markets. So that's not too far off the table.
No, it's not too far off the table. Mm-hmm. And all you have to do is make a couple of control valves and a very elaborate, refining pressure. This is a big process to convert methane to liquefied natural gas. It involves a lot of pressure and a lot of cold, right? Mm-hmm. So any number of things can, some control valves aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, for example, in that massive process. Things can blow up, right? So again, whether that was the reason or not, it doesn't change the fact that Russia knows that the ability to in an uninterrupted manner supply so much LNG to Europe is just, there's too many moving pieces, man. And once they see a weakness, whether they created it or not, they're going to jump all over it. And it was after that they cut these gas supplies even further to Europe, waiting on something to be refurbished in Canada. Mm-hmm. I mean, coincidence? Possibly. Maybe. I doubt it.
Yeah, it's too much of a perfect storm at this point.
Yeah. And so what do we have happen? I'm gonna tee off the next.
I can't believe any of these stories anymore, Anthony.
I know, right? It's almost like super crazy land every week, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, we got more global macro geopolitical energy news every week than I remember in the first 10 years of my career.
So
it's
that we
insane.
could even shake a stick at anymore.
Oh man, the kind of stuff that kind of changes paradigms. So June 20th, 2022, another oil price article here. This is the day of our recording. Ukraine hits oil gas drilling platforms off Crimea, Russia says. Dun, dun, dun. So I guess the war is starting to spill into even more so oil and gas facilities. We'll go into this article a tad here. It's not too long. Ukraine forces attacked on Monday, June 20th, 2022, offshore oil and gas drilling platforms in the Black Sea, the Russia-installed head of Crimea said. Gas production is temporarily halted from the platforms, but there are no disaster-like consequences.
All right.
Says somebody representing Crimea in Russia's upper house of parliament. According to a post on Telegram by Sergei Azginov, I think I said that right. Azginov, I don't know, these names are a little weird for us English speakers, who was appointed as the head of the peninsula that Russia annexed from Ukraine in 2014. Ukrainian forces attacked drilling platforms of the company of, I'm not going to try and read that name. Some long old name. Shernano Gaz. Yeah.
They're close.
Wow. Yeah. Google Translate, hello. I don't know. In the Black Sea. So basically, a Crimea-based oil and gas exploration company, which operates in the Black Sea, was seized by Russian-backed officials in Crimea from Ukraine's state gas firm after the annexation of Crimea back in 2014. So I guess on this recent attack, 5 people, including 3 injured, have been rescued from today's attack. At the time of the attack, there were 109 people on 3 drilling rigs in the Black Sea. Russian lawmaker says that Russia would respond with retaliatory strikes on Ukraine decision-making centers. Moscow Times reports. Well, you better go into the bunker in Kyiv again.
It does make me wonder, they said there was no disaster-like consequences, so they're not carpet bombing these platforms, but for some reason or another, it sounds like folks were shooting, and what does it say here? The Ukrainian military declined to comment on the reports of the attack on the platforms, noting it could not immediately verify those reports. So who knows whether this was directed, but it's spilling out. It's affecting other people who are unarmed.
Yeah. So, and again, it's just more turmoil and potential issues in the interruption of oil and gas and energy flows. It's just happening more and more and more, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'll let you take up to this the next article here about, where's China getting all their oil now, Tavis? Let's let you dive on this one.
I bet those who have been listening will not be surprised, but we've got this article from Oil Price. Russia overtakes Saudi Arabia as China's top oil supplier.
And that's today as well, June 20th.
Oh my goodness. Here we got some bullets. Chinese imports of Russian crude surged by 55% in May as the world's biggest importer of oil took advantage of major discounts. Who's surprised? Russia's now overtaken Saudi Arabia as China's top oil supplier. While Russia is sending lots more crude to Asia, it's unlikely that the Asian market can absorb all 4 million barrels that were going to Europe. So this is just a relationship that continues to grow even stronger as Russia sends cheap crude to not only India, but China and pretty much anyone who will take it. Let's dive into the article, get you some numbers. China imported 1.98 million barrels per day of Russian crude oil in May. I got to say that again. In May, 2 million barrels per day of Russian crude oil, which was up 55% from last year's at 1.6, roughly. So it's growing. They were already doing plenty of business. They're only doing more. Russia is also estimated to have overtaken Saudi Arabia to become India's...
Oh, no, let's restate that.
Am I getting ahead of myself?
You got... No. So China imported 2 million barrels a day of Russian crude in May. up 55% from May last year and up from 1.6 million barrels a day of Russian crude.
Oh, in April. That
of
was my
22.
mistake. Thank you for catching that. Up
Yeah.
55%, not from 1.59, but even less. So
we're seeing a
it's
massive
exploding.
year-over-year increase, and April to May was another increase.
Of about, what, almost 400,000 barrels. Oh my gosh, in 30 days. Woo, that's a change in the rate. What was I saying
Yeah.
about? Ah, yeah. Also, Russia is estimated to have overtaken Saudi Arabia to become India's second largest supplier of crude oil in May. The average daily rate of Russian oil exports to India stood at 819,000 barrels last month, compared with 277,000 barrels per day in April. Oh my gosh. I just get
Yeah.
worse and worse. They get bigger and bigger. They sell more and more oil because people recognize that these are important resources that they can use to develop. And while the rest of the world, I don't know, dreams, they are getting things done, and it's messy. It's disgusting. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. We've called it. We've drawn the stage.
Yeah. Now, they say that still analysts doubt that the Asian market can absorb all 4 million barrels a day of oil that Russia was sending to Europe.
What does that mean? What is being implied here? If China can't take it all, what are they going to do with it?
Well, a couple of problems with that. In a normal market, with normal geopolitics, you have normal expectations, right? They take so much crude in to run their economy, manufacture their stuff, power their stuff, right?
Makes sense to me.
I am not going to go on the limb of hope. We're going to basically hope that Russia can't find a home for all that crude they were sending to Europe. Based on what? Based on historical trends?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now. The Chinese are going to do all kinds of stuff that they're not real transparent about. All right. The fact that we even know that so much is going to China in and of itself is a red flag. The reality is that China, if they want, could literally cordon off hundreds of thousands of acres of what used to be rice paddies and just fill it with lakes of oil for their own reserves, and then cover it with green stuff netting that floats on oil so you can't see it from satellite imagery. You really think that's out of the realm of possibility?
No.
I mean, leading up to the Summer Olympics of 2008, China imported a whole lot of oil way beyond what they needed to run their economy, and that was just to prepare for Olympics. Now, for those reading any news and following anything in regards to the China geopolitical stuff, the tensions there, China could be gearing up to do more than just manufacture tennis shoes, everybody. And if that's the case, I can promise you that if they get it at the right price on discount, they will find a place to put those crude oil barrels.
Oh, yeah. I bet they have the storage. And even if they had to put it in fields or some crazy, ridiculous storage solution, at that point, I mean, come on. How much oil is moving through China and how much of it is, say, doctored, lied about, documents adjusted, ships trading some barrels? I mean, this Russian oil is going to find a way to market however it can, because Europe still needs it, and they'll take it whether it goes through China or Iran, as long as they don't care where it comes from.
The other thing is that if somebody's selling something that you need at 30% off, you're going to find a home for it. Okay? You will.
Bathtubs,
First it was,
garages,
holes.
holes.
Russia's not going to be able to do much with their energy because of these sanctions. Not the case, right? And then it was, India and China are starting to buy. Now they're buying record volumes, right? Well, who else is out there going to want to buy it at 30% off? There's plenty of takers, guys, I can tell you. And the more countries that defy the U.S. sanction system, the less risk is for the next one to say, you know what, I'm going to buy that stuff too.
Yep.
And that's a fact, okay? We can't forget that's a fact, right? So basically, they have something that is a world traded product. It's a commodity that is the most utilized commodity on the planet. It has over 6,000 identified uses a crude barrel of oil does. Way beyond gasoline and jet fuel, okay, and diesel. It's a lot of stuff that it's in. If you sell something that somebody needs at 30% off, which is what they've been doing essentially, or more, it will find a home.
Oh, yeah.
Period. And so I just, the analysts say that, well, we don't think it can absorb it all. What? So you hope that means that Russia will finally feel the burn of the sanctions because they just ran out of takers for their needed commodity that's 30+% off? Come on.
No.
Were you born yesterday? Who are these analysts? Who are these people saying these things? What are they trying to do? Make the administrations in the NATO-centric countries feel that there's still freaking chance?
Yeah. It's
I
probably...
say balooey.
Folks
Balooey
don't
to
have...
that.
Folks don't have the ability to speak as candidly as we do, so that's why you listening should probably frack that follow button so you're not missing any of this golden information that apparently people are too afraid to dive into.
Yeah. So we'll bring it back across the pond here to the good old United States. We finally have an oil company of note that grew a spine. Oh, man, they could only be pushed so much. I'm sure most people listening have heard something around this. Well, this is really short. We'll just dive into it. From Business Wire, June 15th, 2022, ExxonMobil fires back at the White House. Tavis, I'll let you take this one.
Oh, I would love to. Such a short, sweet, hard-hitting article. This is ExxonMobil's statement that they released in response to Biden going, you guys are taking advantage of folks with the refineries.
You made more money than God.
Yeah.
But 1/5 as much as Apple.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
This is ExxonMobil's statement. We have been in regular contact with the administration to update the president and his staff on how ExxonMobil has been investing more than any other company to develop U.S. oil and gas supplies. This includes investments of the U.S. of more than $50 billion over the past 5 years, resulting in an almost 50% increase in our U.S. production of oil during this period. Globally, we've invested double what we've earned over the past 5 years. $118 billion on new oil and gas supplies compared to the net income of $55 billion. This is a reflection of the company's long-term growth strategy and our commitment to continuously invest to meet society's demand for our products. Specific to refining capacity in the U.S., we've been investing through the downturn to increase refining capacity to process U.S. light crude by about 250,000 barrels per day, the equivalent of adding a new medium-sized refinery. We keep investing even during the pandemic, when we lost more than $20 billion and had to borrow more than $30 billion to maintain investments to increase capacity to be ready for post-pandemic demand. In the short term, the U.S. government could enact measures often used in emergencies following hurricanes or other supply disruptions, such as waivers of Jones Act provisions and some fuel specifications to increase supplies. Longer term, government can promote investments through clear and consistent policy that supports U.S. resource development, such as regular and predictable lease sales, as well as streamlined regulatory approval and support for infrastructure such as pipelines. That's their note. That's their letter, and I love this because they give irrefutable data. They compare it to emergencies of the past where supply chains were disrupted, and they tell them they're doing stuff that isn't helping. So this is such a short statement, but I think it packs a lot home.
It does. I mean, it really does. I mean, this is just such a blame everybody else. Blame Putin. Blame oil companies. Blame game. You're the one who canceled pipelines. You're the one who's increased biofuel mandate standards. And more so during the pandemic. You increased them again. I mean, it's ridiculous. You're blaming everybody else. Mm-hmm.
While Exxon continued to invest more money than they were making into projects that, the president has said he wants right now. They've increased their refining capacity. They kept producing in the United States despite losing lots of money, like we talked about last week.
Yeah.
What do you want? What more can I do?
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna actually pull up. We don't do this as often, but every now and then I run across a gem in LinkedIn, some sort of commentary. And this one I'm going to point out on LinkedIn was from, I believe, June 16th. And it was from, I don't know this man, but a Mr. Doug Sheridan, commentary and opinion, global energy industry. And this is a nice little bit. I'm gonna kind of read this for everybody. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes, Joe Biden has suddenly discovered that a refinery shortage is driving up fuel prices.
Suddenly discovered.
Suddenly.
Whoa.
Naturally, he's blaming refiners, even as his admin doubles down on past policies that created the shortage. In a remarkable and threatening letter to oil and gas CEOs this week, POTUS seems stunned to learn that prices rise when supply doesn't meet demand. He's aghast. Gas prices, gasoline here, are still rising above $5 a gallon, even as oil prices have stabilized at $120 a barrel. The problem, he concludes, must be greedy oil companies making too much money. At least Mr. Biden has finally noticed the dearth of refining capacity to process crude, which has existed for years. The U.S. has lost about 1 million barrels a day of refining capacity in the pandemic, and we've talked about that before on our show. Some new refineries have opened in Asia, but the International Energy Agency, IEA, recently reported that global capacity last year fell by 730,000 barrels. A major culprit is legacy government policy. Some older refiners have closed because companies couldn't justify spending on the upgrades as government forces a shift from fossil fuels. They also have to account for the EPA's tighter permitting requirements. One problem is that gasoline consumption, which has been trending lower from last year's level as prices climbed, yet refiners will be required to blend 10% more biofuel this year. That means refiners will again hit the so-called blend wall of how much ethanol and biodiesel can technically be processed into the nation's fuel supply. Refiners that can't comply must buy regulatory credits, adding cost to their business. Some large refiners, such as Marathon Petroleum Corporation and Phillips 66, have sought to comply with these biofuel mandates by converting refineries to produce renewable diesel from vegetable oil. This also lets them cash in on a $1 a gallon federal tax credit and regulatory credits under California's low carbon fuel standard, in which other states are copying. Chevron CEO Mike Wirth said recently that refineries are shutting down or being repurposed for renewable fuels because, quote, the stated policy of the U.S. government is to reduce demand for the products that petroleum refiners produce. To sum it up, 1, when companies are told that demand for their product must be rendered obsolete, it's no surprise they don't invest in supply. In fact, it's predictable. To sum it up, 2, the president slammed refiners for reaping record profits. Does he not understand markets? Refining petroleum is a low-margin business, and the companies lost money early in the pandemic as demand for gas and other fuels fell. Now margins have widened as demand rises again and the industry's capacity to produce has shrunk. To sum it up, 3, Biden demands refiners purpose concrete ideas, quote unquote, to immediately increase the capacity. How about the admin reverses policies handed down from DC politicians and bureaucrats designed to put refiners out of business? And we talked about this before. You increased the biofuel blending mandate since you've been in office. And right now you have worldwide grain and food shortages cropping up and increased prices. What planet are you from? You could reduce the price of gasoline almost overnight by suspending or reducing these stupid biofuel mandates. You don't have the feedstock. Mm-hmm. And what you do have is more expensive by a lot. And then the non-major refiners, they just can't even keep up. So they're going to shut down. You shut down a handful of quote-unquote small refiners, you have a hit to your national refining system.
And the ones that you're talking about, small to mid-cap, but even the large players, like they mentioned, like Mr. Sheridan mentioned, Marathon, Phillips 66, these aren't small names. They're complying with these biofuel mandates, re-kitting their refineries because the government said, you have to. And then predictably, we see something like this, super large reductions in refining capacity. Can we be all that surprised? I mean, I'd be frustrated as heck, man. If I was told to do it, I did it, and then I'm publicly called out and threatened. That's animosity.
Don't worry, we're going to produce all kinds of diesel from vegetable oil.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I guess that'll just be
future.
Another thing that we.
The transition, the vegetable oil transition could be coming up right on the tail end of the coal transition.
Oh my gosh.
It is refreshing, though, to see people. I mean, granted, Mr. Sheardon looks like an energy expert. He's involved in this industry. But what started with people just slapping the "I did that" sticker onto pumps is, as of late, from my perspective, turned into more people, especially in my life, asking me, "So what can you tell me about this? I heard this. Is that true?"
Yeah, I mean, they try to dupe the American people, but it wasn't that long ago where everybody knew we were producing a lot of oil. But they got complacent about it because, well, it's still carbon stuff, and that's just not good, and we should use less. But they knew we had it here. The shale boom, right? It's not that long ago that we were a net exporter for the first time in over half a century. And now all of a sudden we're having supply issues within a couple years. Again, government can do, in my opinion, very little to increase raw production, but they can certainly damage supply that is there and capacity that you will need by absolutely ridiculous stances administratively and politically. And then we'll just end up this week's episode is when one reporter in the last week or two asks White House press secretary, well, why don't we do more drilling in the U.S. for oil and gas? And the response was, we don't need to do that.
Oh, we don't.
We don't. That's the response. We don't need to do that.
I mean, record high energy prices.
So what do we need to do?
Yeah, what's the solution? More green? That's what people have been doubling
Have a
down
crap load of solar panels and EVs that we have to source from where? Oh, yeah, China.
Who doesn't even, well,
who
at
cares
least we
so
talked
much
last
about
week.
what we care about, that they're buying record volumes of Russian crude? Telling our defense secretary, if you in any way, shape, or form involve yourselves or tamper with Taiwan, we will go to war with you. Go to war with you. Hello. You better get this stuff straight quick. All right? You better stop blocking reasonable production, reasonable refining. A biofuel mandate? For what? Why are you increasing a biofuel mandate when you're worried about a global food shortage? Why are you still having that in place? It's lunacy. If everything else aside, if you had a worldwide holdup with grains because of what's going on with Ukraine, don't you think you want every single grain stock used for food?
It would make sense.
Not to put in a freaking gas tank?
Just to burn.
Wake up. God.
I mean, I think,
ridiculous.
Do we have any other stories? Because this episode isn't getting to about 37 minutes, so we might wrap it up at this point. I don't really have much to say. We've spent almost 40 minutes now highlighting just why this is absurd, why it's difficult to operate under the administration, but you got anything else to say?
No, that wraps it up. I wanted to stretch this out a little bit more just to give time to let some of these ridiculous things sink in for people a little bit more.
And we'll keep talking on this, folks. Like I said, frack that follow button. We'll have another episode of this out next week. We've got plenty of other content where we revisit a lot of these ideas. These aren't half-baked things. This is stuff we're researching, chewing over, and really stretching to the far reaches of the internet. We're not pulling this from the only 2 sources we know of. We try to find a little bit of everything. So please join us as we try to come up with our own thoughts, our own opinions, read between the lines, and educate ourselves on a failing energy policy in the United States. But this has been Tavis Killian and Anthony McDaniels with another episode of the Wacky World of Energy. And until we see you next time, take care, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Tav.